What's going on, guys? Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well. And welcome back to a brand new show. Yes, technically, Trafford Talk has returned. It was a previous iteration of this show way back when. And we thought, you know what? New season, new Manchester United, new innovation, new shows. Yes, Trafford Talk is back every Thursday at 7 p.m. British Summer Time. Because this is what it's going to be. We should maybe even have a feature, James, where we've got like time zones.
Yeah, that would be good. Like at the bottom. What time
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to be here every Thursday at 7 p.m. discussing all things Manchester United, which today will include new midfielder targets. If you listened or watched the Trinity on Friday, maybe James with a little bit of soft launch. Bit of a soft launch on that show with Stiller. We're going to be talking about that. We're gonna be brave on this show for the first episode and talk about Kobbie. I know
we've got to, don't we?
I know. And
it's really upsetting. It's really upsetting to talk about, isn't it? It's very stressful.
Very stressful. So we're going to be talking about that, plus anything else, of course, that happens to our lives. So be sure to smash the like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe as well to United View if you are new. Shout out to James from the Muppeteers. His link, as always, is in the video description. You can subscribe there. What's the road to at the moment? Is it
road to 50?
We're going to 50. Yeah.
We're at 30 something. We'll go for 50. It's the next big mark.
Yes. You don't get a plaque for that one. Maybe you just get like, I don't know, just a lot of congrats, a lot of pats on the back.
Well done. Exactly. Yeah. I can make my own, to be fair.
That's true. KG thought when he first started that you got a plaque for 10K. So really? You were like, no, there's a long to go.
Yeah.
There's ways to go.
You send him one out of paper, he can stick it on the wall.
I've done that. I literally wrote that down on the sticky note. 10K. It's right there. Got that from whenever. Exactly. Yes. Let's talk about some of the transfer news that's kind of just broken in the last few minutes before we went live. Actually, about Stiller possibly being the next target that possibly we're going to go for in midfield for this transfer window. Carlos Baleba, that's not happening, and it's been very much stressed of, well, maybe that was a next year signing this summer and money moving around, and it was a market opportunity, as they would say, market opportunity that raised itself, and United thought about going after that. But you did mention, actually, interestingly, on the Trinity, that maybe we should look out for Angelo Stiller. And interestingly, Ben Jacobs reporting this evening, along with Sam C, that one of the midfielders on Manchester United's list of options is Stuttgart's Angelo Stiller. Now, it's a bit of a funny story because there's no guarantee anything develops, which is a big caveat straight away, isn't it?
You don't say.
Or that any midfielder arrives. But internal discussions are taking place over different targets. Stiller has come up in discussions as Manchester United now decide whether to sign another midfielder before the window shuts. Now, this, of course, is based off a lot of exits, potentially, one would think, right? And Garnacho, Sancho, we're going to talk about him a little bit later on as well. Malacia, Anthony, all of those names that we keep hearing this summer, it's going to be based around that. But you did mention this previously, James. Is there legs in this one? Maybe not so much for this summer, but just in general.
Maybe, and I'm sorry to be so undefinitive on such an undefinitive report, but to add to the undefinitiveness of the whole situation, I would say this today. I'd be surprised if they did sign him, because he's not really what they're looking for from, let's say, that deeper position in Carlos Baleba. Angelo Stiller's a really good player, but I think that if you look at his strengths and weaknesses and compared to Carlos Baleba's got like this extra gear of like aggression, gets around really well, physicality is absolutely top notch. Stiller's quite a bit different to that, I would say. Like, if you were to bring Stiller in, do I think you could run a Stiller and Bruno midfield? No. So it doesn't particularly make a ton of sense for right now. It could be somebody in the future, which we can talk about later, how that might affect Kobbie Mainoo, because that's who I think it would knock out of, certain contention once again. So I think it's at the moment just a name that United have looked at, to be fair. I'm sure they're quite aware of him. A lot of clubs are quite aware of him. A lot of clubs have been looking at him, certainly Real Madrid being one of them too. And he is a very talented player. He's in the German league. You would assume that Vivell kind of knows what's going on over there too.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure he's the guy that they would want to go for just based on their pursuit. The names that have been solid have certainly been, Baleba, Wharton, Yeoman. These are all solid names. These are very, very solid names. This one's less so, and I think we'd need to see a lot more evidence of an attempt to sign him beyond just he's someone that they've looked at. You know what I mean? For them to actually make some kind of move for him.
Yeah, it does feel like a very Vivell-driven signing, doesn't it? Player in the German league. He's actually a little bit older than I thought he was. I thought he was like early 20s. He's 24. He's turned 24 this year. So he's one of those players that actually, once again, we'd be looking at going in your early stages of hitting your prime, but maybe not as young as one would think. In terms of his career in general, he obviously started out at Bayern Munich in their youth team, didn't make it, goes to Hoffenheim, and then moved to Stuttgart a couple of years ago. But you're right, he definitely is a name that you feel like he's over the last, what would you say, like year maybe, is one of those names that comes up quite a lot. And it's one of those people that, of course, you have to talk about the elephant in the room. If you don't know the name, Google and you will know. You'll go, I've seen him.
Elephant.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really. It's just a phrase. It's got enough. That wasn't a subtle joke. That was not a subtle joke. I'm not that smart. I'm not smart. I didn't mean that one. Well,
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, it would have been much more like who knows or something like that. That's what it would be. If I was going to go down that route, that's what I would have done. But no.
You wouldn't do that. You haven't done that.
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm a serious SJA winning broadcaster. Not at all. So I'm kind of with you. The problem is, I think United fans in these last few weeks of the window, we want to see some kind of action and drama when it pertains to midfielders and signings. And I don't know, as the days go on, I'm not sure we're going to be involved in that much. I feel like we'll have drama in terms of the exits, because some of those just feel like they're going to go last day. Chelsea obviously going to try and drive that bargain for Garnacho as down as much as they can. United are going to try and stay firm. Sancho, you feel like, is just keeping any option he has open until the very end for, obviously, who's going to give him the highest salary and will May not cover, what he's got left on his contract. There's the Anthony one where I feel like, was it a couple of weeks ago? It was, now he's open to not going to Real Betis because they can't afford to do a deal. And then suddenly over the last few weeks, it's turned back into, no, he only wants to go to Real Betis. So I'm not really sure what's happening with that one. You feel like with all of them, something's got to give, right? So maybe it's one of these ones where United are like, well, we'll see where we're at in the last few days of the window. If we could do something, maybe. But as of right now, it's just the priorities are much different, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the reason we can't totally rule these types of things out is because they do operate a bit differently than we've seen in the past. Like, one of the things they're willing to do is say, okay, we really wanted this number 6. Next year, we want to target a number 8. If we can't get a 6 now, we'll just go on to the next step in the plan and get somebody that maybe we don't need today that we might need in the future, and move through the plan, because they have a different approach where we'd see in years past, they'd be like, we want the 6, so we're going to pay the money, or we're going to pay double the money that they're worth just to make sure we get that signing and not move on to maybe other ideas and other priorities. So it is tough, but at the same time, they do all need all of these sales. Could we make some sort of late move? I mean, we've got only 10 days left. Can you believe that? We've got 10 days left to do something. They certainly need sales. Right? Because Carlos Baleba, I think one of the things we should clear up a little bit that I think people have maybe is a bit of a mistaken idea here is the money wasn't there for Carlos Baleba. The money was going to be borrowed from next year for Carlos Baleba, and they still want Baleba in next summer, so that money's back in 2026. It was like, let's move it forward. Nope, let's move it back because we're going to need it next year for him. So we don't have all this money. We don't have 80 million sitting around to just go and make transfers on. They've got to sell some players to do it, and like you went through all of them. are any of them even particularly close to happening? And I think that's what we kind of need to see first before we say we're going to buy somebody or have a chance at buying somebody.
Yeah, I mean, and also as well, it's funny you mentioned that. Are any of them close to happening? And you would say at the moment, no. But at the same time, there is still this certainty that they will happen, which is a really weird headspace to be in. Of like, there's just no way the window shuts and say Alejandro Garnacho is still United player. It's just not going to happen. We know he's going to go to Chelsea. Even earlier this week, it's Bayern. They're putting in late sort of inquiries, and it's the same answer it's been for him for every club that isn't Chelsea this summer. It's been no, not interested. I only want to go to Chelsea. He's going to go to Chelsea in the same way that, Brian Mbeumo said no to everyone else. He only want to go Man United, so he's going to end up going there. United need to sell, and they don't want to reintegrate. And if you did have that money, and you're sure you're going to have it, you go, well, maybe we could do something pure profit, but there's still this thing of, but it's not done yet. And we don't know what the conclusion of that is necessarily going to look like. We know that it's going to be that he leaves, but those finer details of how much, what the payment structure looks like and what have you, we don't know. And meanwhile, not even technically Chelsea, was it Blue Co are signing players.
Apparently you can support I don't even know what that is. You can be purchased by a conglomerate now. That's what football is.
That's so mad.
We'll decide what team he plays for later. We're just going to sign him for our financial advisory company. What is this?
We just bought a player to go, what, Chelsea or Strasbourg? No, actually, both. He's just in there.
We'll figure it out.
He's not assigned a team yet. We've just sort of entered into this weird new hybrid sport where you just go just somewhere else, which is insane. So Chelsea, look, and the thing is with that, I mean, we laugh at it and say it's clearly them being economic with the rules, but that's why they're also confident with Garnacho, because they're like 2 or 3 steps ahead when it comes to this transfer business. If there's a loophole,
I mean, it would be nice.
They know. Yeah, exactly.
Can we see Ineos have signed, Baleba in January, and they'll sign him to Manchester United on July 1st or something? That would be kind of cool.
Maybe.
Prowlers has purchased this player.
That's
that would
true.
Be nice.
That's true. Maybe it's just, and it's not even necessarily for this sporting venture that Ineos has. Maybe it's just something to do with the F1. We're just going to sign Carlos Baleba to be an F1 driver this season.
Then he'll replace
do the Tour de France or something. Just do that instead.
Could be.
Maybe that's what they do. Be sure to smash a like on the like button, folks. We've got close to 800 people watching. Let's get to 200 likes. Let's see if we can get to 500 before we wrap up the show later on. So that's the latest when it comes to midfielders in terms of incomings. But we've got to have a big debate here. We've got to have a big debate, and this is going to be. Initially this was the title and the thumbnail. It's still in the title. We changed the thumbnail because the Stiller news came up. But we've got to talk, I think, about Kobbie. And the question is Kobbie in danger? Not physically, we must stress. Kobbie's fine. Yeah, Kobbie's fine. If you're tuning in going, what have I walked into? Kobbie's fine. Kobbie's fine. More so in terms of his position in the Manchester United team, his position in the Manchester United squad. Of course, people are still talking about the fact that Arsenal at home, one of the biggest games of the season, regardless of whether it's the opener or closer of the Premier League season, it's a big match. Kobbie Mainoo got 0 minutes on the pitch. And a lot of people saying, wow, you've gone from being an integral part of the team under Erik ten Hag, one of the first names on the team sheet, and certainly towards the end of Ten Hag's tenure, to not being able to get minutes now. Is he in trouble? Now, interestingly, Laurie Whitwell on the Talk of the Devils podcast said, since January, it's been reported that Man United might not openly, this would get the stress, not openly, if clubs came to them with offers for Garnacho and Mainoo, they might reluctantly sell. It's been a consistent thing throughout the summer on Mainoo's position. Uncertainty about where he goes at United. Does that lead to an exit? I was told pretty strongly, pretty confidently that he would not be leaving, although I do think there's been some inquiries or questions about him being at the club beyond this window. Like we said, James, this is an interesting one, and it does bring up a lot of nervousness. Where do you stand on the Kobbie situation at the moment? Is he in trouble under Ruben? Is that maybe too soon to say, or is there something in that?
Kind of depends on what you think is okay or not. If you think he's in trouble because at his age he's not playing football every week, then yeah, he's in trouble because he's probably not going to be a starter in Ruben Amorim's team this season on a regular basis, especially given that United have one game a week. You know, if we had Champions League, if we had European football, you'd be rotating a lot more. You'd have to make a lot more changes. You'd have to mix the team up, and you'd see a lot of players getting a lot of minutes. But we do have to bear in mind the simple fact is we have one game a week in the Prem. You know, in between we'll have Grimsby, which he'll probably start, by the way, when we play games like that. And you have in his position, it's Bruno Fernandes. You know, and I think the thing that people have to look at too is that last year, Ruben Amorim played Kobbie Mainoo in every single game after his first game at the club. His first game at the club, Kobbie didn't play. He was just returning from injury. He played every single game after that when he was not injured. Every single one. So it's not like he hasn't used him. He played him deep. He tried him in the 10. He tried him in the 9, even briefly on a few occasions. But I think what that tells you is that Ruben sees him primarily as a guy who plays maybe not, he's not going to move him deeper, that's for sure. If anything, he sees him as someone that maybe needs to move further up. So the biggest problem he has there is you've got Bruno Fernandes, Cunha, and Mbeumo in probably the 3 positions that you might consider for Kobbie Mainoo, one of the 10s or in that 8. And 2 of them are new signings, and one of them's your club captain who plays every minute of every game, has an insane engine, never needs a rest, and you kind of just come up into that unfortunate situation of you've come up behind Bruno Fernandes. I mean, this happens to players in sports at certain times. You come up behind someone who's just, they're not going to not play, and you just have to be a little more patient than you might be expected in that position. So I think that's the biggest issue that he's got right now, and I think he's just going to have to take his time to build into that. And we saw preseason, Kobbie started with Manuel Ugarte when Bruno was more forward. And whenever Bruno started, it was Casemiro, and that's the partnership he picked. And nobody else is getting into that partnership. It's just going to be that kind of decision.
I was asked about this the other day. I did a thing on TalkSport, and I do. This goes back to the overemphasis sometimes I think we put on young players that do well or show promise at Manchester United. I feel like if we do see a young player come through, for example, Kobbie Mainoo, and he does well, and people kind of almost overlook his rise, not just for Manchester United, but for England as well, based off his first full season of senior football. And it wasn't even a full season because he missed the first however many months because he got injured on the preseason tour. And clearly there were plans for him to be involved because he was playing games against Real Madrid and Arsenal. But, it's not even a full season. It's a comeback one from injury. And he does really, really well. Suddenly, he's like, well, he's starting every week for Manchester United. He gets called up to international duty, but because he's still so young and raw, they went, well, let's be careful. Under 21s. Let's go to under 21s first. And he doesn't even play for the under 21s. They immediately just go to the senior squad. Go into the senior squad. A couple of months later, he's playing in the Euros finals for England. And again, he's like a key player in that team and a key player in the success to get that far in the tournament. So you go from that at the age of then, he would have been what, 19, 18. It's entirely normal that a player of his age would be in and out of the team, not a nailed down regular starter, particularly at a club like Manchester United. That's the way it really should work. I think it's because we're so desperate to find, we've got this kind of like Messiah. We need someone. We need a hero. Like that.
Who's our next guy?
We are fully. Was it Bonnie Tyler? We are holding out for a hero. We really are all the time. And if we see one, and Kobbie, and he's come up clutch and scored late goals for us in big games, big moments. Obviously against Lyon last year, he scored a late goal against Wolves when we literally threw that one away. Like he's done it, and obviously scored goal in FA Cup final. So we're like, oh, he's amazing. This is going to be our midfielder for the next 10, 15 years. And he still might. But I think he should be in and out of the team. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Bruno Fernandes is going to be here forever. Bruno Fernandes might be gone next season.
He could. He almost left this summer.
Exactly. And by that point next season, let's say Bruno does go, and he had this sort of verbal pact with Man United of sort of give it another year, World Cup. After that, I'll go Saudi. I'll get the big deal. Kobbie's 21 at that point. Like he's still nowhere near prime, peak, or anything like that. So I think the sort of maybe worry about he's not going to fit in, he's not going to do this, he's not going to do that, might be a bit short-sighted. But that doesn't say that he doesn't need to adapt or improve, because I think you're right. The talk about is he in trouble, is he in danger? I still say I think he signs a new contract. I don't think he leaves. I think there clearly has been maybe a bit of a discrepancy of how much he and his people think he's worth and should be getting versus Ineos of, again, you're 20. This isn't your biggest contract. We should got to stagger this. But I do think there also has to be this openness to be like, well, if it is going to work out with Kobbie at United, he's going to have to adapt. He's going to have to, adapt. Because like you said, tried in the 10, in the 8 of, could he do what Bruno's doing? You need to be a bit more mobile about you. You need to be able to get around. Not maybe to Bruno's level, because not everyone could do that, but you've got to improve. But again, that's normal, isn't it, for a 20-year-old?
It is. And it should be fine. And he should be able to improve. And he should be able to become a bit more athletic, a bit more mobile, maybe improve, like some people are saying, on his passing range and things like that as well, to get on with it. Like, I think it's an interesting example there, because when you look at Casemiro, for example, him playing deep in the 6, which is something that I've had severe concerns about. And you said, well, could Kobbie play in that role? Why can't he play there? Well, Casemiro, interestingly, is sort of got on against Arsenal, and as we've seen in the good games, because he doesn't have to run. He can kind of sit and then just spray that ball around with those long passes out wide, and he doesn't have to get up the pitch. Kobbie Mainoo has to dribble to carry the ball up the pitch, right? That's his skill set. He carries it up. So then when you lose it, he's got to get all the way back and all the way forward. And so it's about finding the right place in the team for him and to adapt. And the one thing that I really don't want us to do, because we've done it so many times, and as United fans, it's like it goes back and forth. We spend years going, we want a system manager. We want a manager who's going to play a way of football, who's going to implement his ideas, who's going to stick with it, and we're going to recruit for one type of team, and that's the direction we're going to go, and we're going to win games that way, because that's what City did. That's what Liverpool did. That's what Arsenal are doing. That's what every successful club is doing. And then that manager gets in and you go, wait, hold on a second. Why is this player not playing every week? And it's just how it works. I mean, there's never going to be a manager that comes in and suits every single player that's already there when you have a team that's been built the way United has. And in this case, it's like, I didn't expect, a year ago, I wouldn't have expected Marcus Rashford to be out of the team and at a different club and not in the side. I wouldn't have expected that from a few players to be gone. And yet there they are, they're gone. And I'm not saying Kobbie Mainoo is going to go or anything like that, but it doesn't always instantly suit, a manager coming in and putting a system, and you have to adapt. And Kobbie Mainoo wasn't sold this summer. And as you shared that thing from Laurie, that he was going to stay, and it was pretty concretely stated he will stay, to me, that just means there's a plan for him to build into that role and become the guy. And I think he'll just take over from Bruno in a year or two, and he'll only be 21 or 22 years old. And if he takes over as the midfield general at 21 or 22, that's still unbelievably young.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. I totally agree. The only, and this maybe is playing devil's advocate here. The only thing I do worry about a little bit is, let's say hypothetically, we don't have a great season this season. Let's say we don't get European football again, or whatever happens. When do you think, is there a breaking point where Ineos go, look, we've got to cash in, and
and for the money, because he's an asset. But wouldn't we sell Bruno first, potentially, in that case? Also a pure profit. He's older. If you're saying we're not good enough, we have to rebuild, you could sell Bruno before you sell Kobbie.
That's true. I mean, to be honest, thinking about it, actually, if we really think about this, in fast forward 12 months, Man United's midfield has the potential, anyway, to look radically different. Like, we're talking about Bruno. We'll see what happens. It feels like every summer this Saudi thing comes up. So I think it would be naive to say, well, it didn't happen like this past season, so it's not going to happen again. Yeah. Casemiro, he's going to leave on a free. There's no way that any options or that's
They're never going to keep paying him $350,000 a week. It's over, guys.
Exactly. So with that means then next year, there's the potential for it to be a completely different midfield.
Yeah.
And that's maybe the time when if it looks like Kobbie isn't part of that, I think maybe that's the time to get concerned. And what does his contract situation look at that point? Because he's still got, was it 2 years left? Was it 3 years left on his deal?
I think 3
like
still. He's not like running down towards the end yet. So you've got time.
No, exactly. So yeah, it could look totally different. Just finally, before we move on with the midfield stuff, thoughts on Ugarte?
It was a bad appearance. I'm going to leave it at that. Look, I've tried to explain this before, and I think it gets maybe a bit misunderstood. I tend to do this thing where when I think a player gets over-criticized, I'll flip it in the other direction and defend them. And I did this with Fred too, back in the day, one of my favorite players at United, because I always felt like whenever Fred played, every flaw of his was magnified by such a huge amount because he doesn't really fit the aesthetics of what people like to watch. They can be kind of these clumsy players and things like that. And they get really beat up. They get really, really beat up by things. And you get all this stuff now, like even now you get this whole situation of like, the Mainoo thing becomes an Ugarte discussion. Why? It's not actually relevant to each other, frankly. If you actually look at how Ruben picks his team, they're not even relevant to each other, but it gets used to beat up on others. So I like players who give everything, and I always will defend players who give everything. But Manuel Ugarte was top of my list for the players that had to have a good season or they're going to be gone next summer. They get 2 years, right? That's really the rule. Yeah. You always get 2 years. There's players who need to have a good season. Ugarte has to have a good season. If he doesn't have a good season, he'll be sold next summer. And it's like, why don't we just leave it at that? I'm not going to start beating up on every player. It doesn't matter who it is. On August 21st, when they're going to be here for the rest of the season, and I have to hope that they can turn it around and succeed, because nobody's going to win if Ugarte has a really bad season. That's going to be bad for all of us. We kind of do need some of these guys to actually have a good year. So hopefully better, because it was a rough one. It was a rough one. He seems very much lacking in confidence, and now it starts that spiral of like mistake. I hope they can get out of it.
He just couldn't pass. He literally couldn't pass the ball. He just couldn't. And the problem is, this is kind of like Minna's point when she's spoken about this, going sort of, I know that you can have specialists in midfield, but not sometimes if you've got a two-man midfield, because you do need them to have a bit, not just one function. Manuel Ugarte, his stats have always been, when he was at Sport, and even when he was at PSG, that was just, he wins the ball back. It's interceptions, duels, tackles. That is what he does. The problem is then when you look at his other statistics, they're very low because he's good at winning the ball back. Ironically enough, and maybe you wouldn't think this against Arsenal, but we did actually in that game, particularly after Arsenal in the last sort of 30 minutes of the game, Arsenal backed off quite a lot. They were a bit deeper than maybe people were thinking. And you actually did need someone. You didn't really need that much battle in there. You actually needed someone that could, ironically, maybe like a Kobbie, pass the ball forward. That's why I think Casemiro actually did quite well in that game. Because
he did.
He can pass. He can pass it so he can move it around. So it was almost like, I think maybe, I think that's one where Ammorim got that wrong. Ammorim got that one wrong in the way that he was seeing the game going. I think maybe there was a bit of concern that if Man United pushed too forward or went too attacking,
then they would go counter, and then you concede, and then the game's over.
Which Arsenal they nearly happened. But yeah, it would be interesting to see if he does make that mistake again with that. But looking forward to the weekend. Of course, it's Fulham this time round. How are you feeling about that? I mean, there was still a lot of chatter coming out of the Arsenal game that is, I don't care. Ironically enough, we've come full circle, because I remember when Erik ten Hag was at the club and it was results, and it was, I don't care about results, I want to see performances. Now it's, I don't care about performances. I want to see results, because Ruben Ammorim doesn't have many positive results. Do you think we're going to get that positive one this weekend?
Yeah, I do. And I think that there's obviously a balance in this. Like, if we lose to Fulham, I think you lose all the credit for the good performance against Arsenal. And it becomes not meaningful, because it's like at some point you can't just keep having good performances and not winning, because then it's not necessarily an accident. something's fundamentally wrong if we still can't score goals and win games. There's still something wrong there, especially with the players that we have. So it makes it very big. But at the same time, if you do start winning games and climbing the table, and you have Fulham and then you have Grimsby right in the midweek, so you have the potential here to string 2 wins together, which you should get. Then you can build some momentum on this. And I think alternatively, I think Ruben said this when he was early on too, and we definitely saw it last year. They kind of need the wins to get the confidence. They need the wins to get the momentum. They need the wins to know that what they're doing is working. Because as much as it's like it's easy on the outside to say they got to win games and we get frustrated as fans, I think for players it's really demoralizing when you don't win. Really demoralizing. And you got to have that belief in each other and the system and what you're doing, that it's all going to work. And they got to win for that. So I feel like I think we'll win. I think we'll win against Fulham, and I think we'll win against Grimsby. I mean, God, we better win against Grimsby.
Well,
Good Lord.
Yeah.
But if you win those 2, then we'll sit at the end of those 2 and say 2 wins, had a good performance against Arsenal opening week. We're on the right track. And I think there's going to be a lot of belief that comes from that. So we have to. I think everybody's a little nervous. Like, did we just fluke that good performance against Arsenal, still not manage to win, and then it's going to be back to business as usual on Sunday?
Yeah, it's kind of like Ruben was saying last season when he said that. I've got no evidence to tell you that it will come good or that I will be a success here, but I'm telling you that I will be a success. It's kind of one of those ones where, like you said, we look at that performance, we go, that was good, but I still need that bit maybe more concrete evidence. That there is this week to week there is going to be a success. Win a game and a performance. But I agree with you. I was actually. I can't remember actually the last time, even not winning the game, but I actually enjoyed watching Man United play. I enjoyed that performance. I enjoyed the endeavour. I really am excited by those attacking players. Hopefully, Šeško will probably start this weekend. You would think.
Yeah, I think that would help
from
a
the
lot.
Start, having that focal point, but really, really impressed by Mbeumo and Cunha. I mean, there's so many debates and discussions over the summer about Premier League proven. What does that mean? Well, I think we saw what it meant. I mean, you got players there who know the league, they know the opposition, they've played against them a bunch of times. And Mbeumo and Cunha, they are ready to go right now. It's one of those ones where, and we've done so often with signings that we've made over the last few years, certainly, it always feels like there has to be this discussion of, well, they're young, so they've got to develop, or they're coming from here, so they've got to settle in. The expectation on Bryan Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha, like we saw, is, well, they've got to be good now. And they should be. And they are. Who would have thought? Who would have thought signing 2 of the best attacking players in the Premier League last season would actually improve your attack? Like, that's really positive. The only thing is we just need to score. So
and to be fair, Cunha was really, really good in that game. I mean, I think people saw just how special he was, but he should have had a penalty, I mean, I know that it's like it can be frustrating blaming things on the officials, but that was a penalty. Like,
it was a penalty.
He did draw a penalty.
Yeah.
It should have been a goal, at least one in that game.
I'm shocked that more wasn't made of that. I am shocked. Like, you saw it on Twitter afterwards, people going, that's a penalty, that's a penalty. And not a lot got made of it, but it was. And that's the frustrating thing with it, is that this season, obviously, we will see penalties be given for less. And when it comes to even the Bayern thing, I'm with the point of view of Bayern has to be much stronger there. He's too weak. We've seen him sort of flap at crosses before or corners before. It's nothing new. But on the other hand, we will see goals ruled out for less on a goalkeeper this season.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
100%.
Absolutely we will. No doubt about it. If you haven't already, folks, click the like button. We've got over 1,000 people watching. We're about 125 likes away from 500. So if you haven't already, click the like button. See if we get to 500 likes on the first episode of Trafford Talk. Starlord, been a member for 38 months. My goodness. Says, F it. I'm going to say it. This never follows good. We will get top 4, and Mount will be a key player. And big up absolutely everyone. There was allegations of nepotism towards Mason Mount when he started at the weekend. Like this, that's Ruben's blind spot. He's got a blind spot for Mason Mount. He really likes Mason Mount. But do his performances justify that? I mean, he was another one that played really well at the weekend.
He was really good. I think he was pretty integral to United getting in control of that game. And I guess my question would be, Like, you get people who talk about like the Obrigado tax, like he's always going to start Portuguese players. But what nepotism could there be between Ruben Amorim and Mason Mount? I got to ask, to be honest.
I think
it's barely even seen him.
Yeah, I think it's just like when Ruben arrived, one of the first pictures United released was him like hugging Mason Mount in the gym
because he was injured.
Like yeah, exactly. And now since then, or when Mount scored that goal in the Europa League, like they had that shot of Ammorim sort of on in the dugout, kind of looking a bit like that, you know.
Do you know every single manager really likes Mason Mount? It's not unique to Ruben. He's gotten so much praise from every manager. I mean, used to have, I think it was Thomas Tuchel people used to go, why is he still picking Mason Mount every single game back in the day? And every manager that's ever managed Mason Mount picks him and really likes him. There's got to be a reason for that. And sometimes you see it. He's kind of a guy who does whatever it takes and obviously hasn't stayed healthy, and that's been unfortunate, but he's a hard worker. He's an intelligent player. I think you saw in that first game, he certainly has a use in the team. No doubt about that.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And this is one that will get people talking. So Starlord says Mount will be a key player. Who will be more key to Ruben Amorim this season? Mason Mount or Kobbie Mainoo?
Well, yeah, that's a tough question, isn't it? You're setting up for difficulty here. The problem is, it's like, man, that is rough. Next week, I'm trying to think this through. Next week, Benjamin Šeško starts on Sunday. Cunha and Mbeumo will be next to him. We know Mason Mount's then not going to start, right? I mean, you would assume that Mason Mount is not going to start. If we need a goal, who comes off at the bench? Kobbie Mainoo or Mason Mount?
I still think, he would still bring on Mason Mount.
He probably would.
Even Mason Mount, because Mason Mount scored in pre-season, you know, and he did score. He scored a few goals towards the end.
Three, right? You know, like
he did score a few goals towards the end of the last season. Can play as a 10, can play in the 8, the way that Ruben wants.
So here's where it gets funny. I actually think Mainoo will end up starting more games than Mason Mount, but I think Mason Mount might end up being more impactful because I think there'll be a lot of times when they rotate and Mainoo will start deeper and Bruno will start in the 10s to give rest to Cunha and things like that. But I think that Mason Mount, like when they're not starting, I do think Mason Mount might come off the bench first. Depends on the game state. If we're winning, then it's going to be Kobbie Mainoo because I think you get a bit more security with him, a bit more ball retention, a bit more, dribbling. You can move Bruno up front. You can put Kobbie in the midfield. He tackles. And so it kind of depends. If we start winning games earlier, I think Mainoo will start to become more important because you bring him on to be like a guy who can really help you control the game and shore it up. And then his qualities will show a bit more. So I don't know. If we're good, maybe it'll be Kobbie Mainoo. And if we're chasing goals every game, then it'll probably be Mason Mount.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting one. One.
It is, yeah.
We're less than 100 likes away from 500 likes, folks. If you haven't already, click the like button. Let's talk goalkeepers as well, actually. My favorite subject, because, of course, a lot of people were talking about goalkeepers coming out of the game at the weekend. Now, once again, Laurie... I don't know. I don't know. Laurie Whitwell was talking on the Talk of the Devils podcast about the likes of Donnarumma, other goalkeepers. Laurie said, Donnarumma is the big one people keep asking about. His wages are just. His demands are huge. I don't see how United can go for that. There are people saying to me they can see him going to Manchester City still. Lamens, Costa, I think they've got a list of goalkeeper options that they are watching and discussing whether to pursue or not. Now, on getting a goalkeeper, it's quite interesting, actually, what Laurie Whitwell said, because over the last couple of weeks, it's very much been the story that, no, it's just not going to happen. They have to move people on and it just doesn't look likely. He said here, it depends who you speak to if United will sign a goalkeeper. If they're going to sign a goalkeeper for money, it depends, a bit like what you've said all the time, James, on Andre Onana leaving. It's an interesting thing. I want to get into that at some point accurately. If Ammorim wanted him to play, he could have played. But there's elements in that's interesting and we could investigate. There are some people at United that think they need to get a new goalkeeper. That's quite obvious, to be honest. So Laurie throwing a bit of a curveball there.
It's confusing.
Yeah, throwing a bit of a curveball by sort of going, well, look, if United need to get a new goalkeeper, they'd have to move Onana on. Onana's not been told he's going to leave or they want him to leave, and nothing's going to really change there. But then on the other hand, he goes, but at the weekend, he was ready to play, he could have, but he didn't. So what does that tell you? How integral is he to the team? Is that? Do you think that's Laurie does devil's advocate? But because he's hinting at certain things there, going, I could have played, and I want to get into that at some point accurately and sort of report what happens. Is there more there, do you think?
It feels like it. It feels like it. It was very, very odd. You know, the whole story with Onana has been very odd this summer when you kind of look at it. It was like, we need a goalkeeper. They were looking at goalkeepers. They're talking about goalkeepers. Then he's like, oh, they had a meeting with Onana and he's going to be the first choice goalkeeper. And then he comes back from summer and he's injured the entire preseason. That has to bother them, given the focus this summer has been so much on the fitness, on having everybody together. How does your goalkeeper come back injured? Like, of all the players that could come back and not be fit, how is it your goalkeeper? The one who's asked to move the least, do the least on the pitch of anybody. It's your goalkeeper who comes back and has a muscle injury that keeps him out for months. And you start to have to, I feel like that introduced some extra doubts to the situation, because fairly shortly after that, I think they made a loan bid for Emi Martinez. Yeah. And then you start to go, well, you say we're good with Onana. He's our first choice goalkeeper, but we made an offer for Emi Martinez, but we didn't get him. But we want a goalkeeper, but we don't. Well, a lot of these things, it feels like someone's confused, just even in the way that United are acting here. So I think the clarity on it is they want a goalkeeper. They can't buy a goalkeeper. That's why they made that loan offer. Do they think that they can risk going into the season without one? That's the real question. Is it a risk that they feel like we can't take the financial risk of buying one without moving somebody on? Are they trying in the final weeks of the window to say to Onana, we're not happy with you? You know, is that why he was dropped? And see if they can get him out to get somebody else in. Because Lamens continues to be one that Laurie mentioned there. Diogo Costa, seemingly still one that United have followed for years and years. So I do wonder, I have wondered since that happened, is it a message to Onana? We're actually pretty unhappy with how this has turned out. Because if he could have been selected and he wasn't, then is it any different to Rasmus being dropped from the team?
Yeah, it is again a curious one, because like you said, the loan offer for Emi Martinez is established as fact at this point. Like they've made the offer, they went after him. So, but now they've just decided, oh no, we don't need a goalkeeper. It's an odd move. You spoke about Rasmus Hojlund there. Fabrizio Romano has just posted in the last few seconds. This is always the positive being live. We've got over 1,100 people watching right now, guys. We're less than 70 likes away from 500. So if you haven't already clicked the like button, remember you can get in your super chats, members chats as well. Romano has just said that Manchester United have informed Napoli that they're open to both loan with option or obligation to buy for Rasmus Hojlund. The preference is for an obligation, but that is up to Napoli, while Rasmus insists on an obligation as he wants to feel full confidence for the long term in his future club, which, that, to be fair, is a big development there, because still there was this feeling with Hojlund, wasn't there, that any exit could still be scuppered by his insistence on staying at Manchester United. Now, obviously, look, he wasn't even in the squad at the weekend, didn't get on in that final preseason game against Fiorentina. And Manchester United really sort of, explicitly said you're going to really struggle to get minutes this season. Now, I suppose maybe a bit of fortuitous luck for Manchester United. Napoli have just had that injury to Lukaku. He's out of action for several months. And suddenly they're on the lookout for a striker, maybe specifically a striker with Serie A experience. And Manchester United have raised their hands and said, we've got one exactly who you're looking for. But the fact that now there's Romano's suggesting that Hojlund is insisting on an obligation, that's pretty big, because that would suggest then that he's resigned himself to going, well, I'm leaving then. And not even like a loan on I can come back and see what happens. It's like, well, no, I just want to go where they actually want me. So this one could definitely happen.
Yeah, this is now looking like the most likely one, funnily enough, after kind of everything. And I was actually discussing this just yesterday, because it's kind of I was describing it as one of those scenes where it's like, you know, from a movie, you've got like the dog just trying to stay, and they're like, no, you gotta go, get out of here. And then they have to like smack him with the boot, and then he leaves permanently, you know. And it's like,
what film is this?
No. But it's like, you gotta, you know, they have to get him to go. And I think part of what's happened here is that they've been so firm on the situation, leaving him out of the teams and all of that, that the relationship's kind of broken down to where he's like, well, screw it then. I don't want to be here at all. I'm not coming back. I'm not coming back. You're going to stick me in the bomb squad. I'm not coming back. I'm going to have to be, gone again, sitting, trying to find a move next year, and I'm not going to get minutes. I've got to go permanently. I want to go somewhere where I'm going to be valued. I'm going to stay if I'm going to leave Manchester United and play, because I don't believe that there's anything for me in coming back. So you got to respect that, to be fair, from Rasmus on that front. I think that's a good call if he's going to leave, to want to leave permanently. So it's kind of up to just Napoli, is what it seems like. Like, if they'll offer that obligation, it's a done deal.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
And how much does that probably end up looking like then? I mean, the suggestion was at one point 30, then it got moved back up to 40. I mean, well, I think it's accepted that we're going to take a loss on him, even on the books at this point, isn't it?
It depends, though, because if you get a loan fee and the wage is covered and the obligation is next summer, then United don't have to take a loss on him, even at 30 million, because you get another year, of that value kind of coming down. So I think they'll probably have to offer a pretty fair obligation on it. But I would suggest something like, 30 million pounds would probably be enough for United to kind of break even, and you save some money this year, you move it off, and he's gone, and he goes, and that might be a price Napoli are willing to pay. I mean, look, they got Scott McTominay for 30 million pounds. And look at how that's turned out for them, So I think we've got United seem to have a good reputation with moving players to Italy. They tend to be pretty successful there. Even many of the ones we haven't wanted. So it feels like they must know the terms here, Napoli, and they're still in the discussions and they're still working on it. So I think this one could happen for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one with Hojlund. Mr. Miracle says here, respect to Hojlund. Things didn't go well during his stay. A lot was out of his control. I wish him all the best. His frustration with this team is more warranted than the fans' frustration with him. Hojlund's a really interesting one over the last week because, or last few weeks, because there has been this sympathy towards him of like, oh, that's not. It goes back to what do we necessarily want, isn't it? It's this feeling of, we want Man United to be ruthless. 2 seasons. If you don't prove it, it doesn't matter how old you are or young you are, then get out. We're doing it now with this player, and it's sort of like, oh, it's not really his fault, and maybe you should say. And to be fair, it's one of those ones where all of the arguments, they're all kind of right when it comes to Rasmus Hojlund, right? In terms of like the amount that was paid for him. We got completely screwed over by Atalanta in that deal. They absolutely saw us coming, and they got that fee. I bet they're like, I cannot believe it. And that's never the player's fault, and you have the extra pressure that comes with it. Clearly, he was not ready to lead the line at Manchester United in terms of where he's at in his career. But then I suppose the other part of it is, if you can only play the cards you're dealt. And even if it's a shit hand, you got to try as a player to make the most of it. And regardless of difficult circumstances and the team's failure is not entirely on him, but there can still be this sort of feeling of, he's probably not good enough though. And this isn't probably right for him. What's right for him is to go back to Italy, play, and still a very good team. Napoli, they won the league. They play for Antonio Conte.
They're better than us right now.
It's a great, that's a great move for him. So, I don't know. Well, what do you think about that? Do you think he's been harshly done by this whole thing?
I think they shouldn't have bought him in the first place, and that's fine. But it's not like he didn't accept the move to join Manchester United to lead the line and try to rebuild this team. He did. He accepted the move. He made the move. He bet on himself to be able to do that. There are players who didn't. I mean, it's kind of funny when you look at it. You have Benjamin Šeško turned down a move to United, I believe, right? Early on, because he didn't think he was ready. You've seen players do that, and then they come later and it all works out because they decided, I might actually be better suited. I think some of that comes to advisors. I look at Erling Haaland. He also turned down a move to United to end up going to Dortmund to develop there, and in the end became probably the best number 9 in the world. There's responsibility on the player's side too, to say, maybe don't just take the first giant move that lands at your feet, because it could be a bad move for your career, because it is dangerous to do these kinds of things. It is dangerous to move to a big club as a young player and be the guy. There's a lot of failures that have happened there. So It's not to say it's not his fault. It's understandable. He's just not good enough. If United buy young players, if this summer, like we were just talking about, Manuel Ugarte is only a couple of years older, I think. He's only 23 or something. If he's not good enough, he'll be sold.
Yeah.
And the same goes for everybody else. If Joshua Zirkzee can't get fit and have a decent season this summer, he will also be sold. And so
I was waiting for you to say
Kobbie
Mainoo. I was waiting for you to
No. We're gonna leave the Kobbie Mainoo discussion.
If Kobbie Mainoo can't fit in the team, he'll be sold. So I was waiting for is he gonna drop that one? No, I think you're right. I think can you feel bad for him? Yes, he's a United fan, and that must suck. You go to the team you've dreamed of going to, and it doesn't work out. That's not nice. But this is elite level sport. There isn't room for sentiment. And maybe in the past, the previous regimes, they'd have kept him on, thinking, well, we've got to get value. We've got to get value out of it, and it's not necessarily just about sporting merit. It's about value. We've got to get value, and they're not doing that now. And I think it's maybe one of those ones as well. Hopefully, that it does send a bit of a message to the rest of the squad of, bloody hell, like Rasmus only here for a couple of seasons and he loved it here, and they spent a lot of money. They took a loss on him, or close to a loss, because he wasn't good enough. I'm only getting a couple of years. Omar Barada was telling the truth with that. So I don't necessarily have too much of an issue with that. I think the idea of as well that we're going to regret it because what if Šeško gets hurt, or we're light in that area. But we're always going to have a smaller squad this season. And I suppose regardless of backup or not, if he's not good enough, he's not good enough, right? And that might be the difference of us going to get a midfielder or someone else this window, because they can count on close to £40 million coming in for Rasmus Hojlund, right? That could be a big difference. We spoke about the exits. If all of those exits do get over the line, so Hojlund, Sancho, Malacia, Garnacho, Anthony. I mean, how much money is that raising?
That's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Yeah, and it's a lot of money. I mean, depends on the deals, right? If it's straight loans but it could be a significant amount of money that comes in. I mean, enough to fund something big, but the question is when. If these had come in earlier, I even think the pursuit of Carlos Baleba would have been different, because clearly, if we'd been able to approach it maybe 2-3 weeks earlier with more money, the answer might have been different. I look at Adam Wharton on that and I say, now they've sold Eze, he might be completely untouchable at Crystal Palace at the end of the window, because they haven't bought anybody. I mean, they have one player in, I think, for $2 million. They certainly don't want to lose maybe their best player in the midfield now after Eze goes. So it might be helpful. It might not do much for us now, but might make it so we could be very active in January, which I think is something not to forget.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, actually, is that, we're known for being relatively quiet sometimes in January, but if the money is there, but the time wasn't at the end of this window, then you never know. There are always market opportunities in January. Yeah, they're always there.
We got Dorgu. He's a good player.
Yeah, we need him. Who we now like, but again, initially we liked him, but we got him. Then and this was where the criticism was too much of a young player that had just come in. He's not good enough. Now we do like him again, and he played well at the weekend too.
I think he did too. Yeah.
So we're back to, can we find 10 Dorgus? Previously that might have been a wild statement.
Now we can go find 10
Dorgus again. So maybe in January, and I suppose as well, it depends on how the season's going at that point too. If they feel like the money's there and getting someone in January is the difference between us finishing 6th or 5th or 4th, then Ineos would be right to go for it, wouldn't they? Because that's Champions League. That's a lot of money on the line.
Yeah. It's like someone mentions there, the last 2 permanent purchases in January is Dorgu and Bruno. Bruno changed that season. We got into Champions League because we bought Bruno in January. You can find that player, then go for it. You can get that deal done if adding another forward or a midfielder or a goalkeeper at that point in time, you think, we're actually playing really well, but these mistakes have not stopped. Let's spend the money. Let's just get it done in January, and the rest of the season can be improved. So that's also an opportunity. The season's not over. There's a lot of points to be won from January on, and usually you're getting a lot of clubs that they start to fade in that second half, and that's the time to attack it if United feel there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, well, and also as well, we're going to be at that point pretty decimated by AFCON potentially. So that
true,
might be a time where we do look for certain replacements because we're going to be missing a lot of players. Mr. Miracle says, thanks for getting through that, ignoring my typos. No problem. Appreciate it, Mr. Miracle. Appreciate the super chat. So there you go, guys. That's episode. I don't even know if we're doing episode numbers for this. I'm not sure if this is officially episode 1, but this is Trafford Talk. We will be here every Thursday live, 7 p.m., talking about Manchester United news, rumours, Tier 1 James with soft launches all over the place. That's what it's going to be this season. Remember to check out James from the Muppeteers on the channel Muppeteers. Road to 50k, links in the video description below. So go and show them some love, go and subscribe. We're going to be back tomorrow morning on United View, 9 a.m. Flex and myself for another edition of the Transfer View. It's Friday, so there will be a live episode of the Trinity as well at 4 p.m. And then we get into match weekend, of course, once again, with the late kickoff on Sunday. Fulham versus Manchester United. It's always, whenever we go there, we've actually got a half-decent record at Craven Cottage, but it's always kind of last minute.
Grindy, yeah.
Garnacho goal, last minute Bruno goal. Leacher, it was a rare Ruben Ammorim W last season, with Leacher's goal. So what are we saying? Do you reckon we go with a win?
We can't lose.
I
can't face the consequences of a loss.
No.
And the discussion that'll come after, I can't even think of it. We have to win that game and play well as well. And they weren't good the first week, Fulham either. They actually were really struggling. So there's no excuses. United got to put in something serious in that game. I agree. Actually as well, I think it's going to be more comfortable than we think. I'm going to go with like a 3-1. I think for all the chatter about 3-1, yeah.
For all the chatter about not scoring goals, I think we're going to be like, actually, you know what? Man United look dangerous and score goals. So here's hoping. Maybe the front three each get a goal. That would be lovely. So there you go, guys. That's Trafford Talk for you. We'll be back same time next week. Until then, we'll speak to you again soon. We're out of here. Peace.